Okay, it is here. It is time. Talk, 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 talk is all we've done now for a year. And we've got four teams left. It's the final four of college football. Are you ready for it? Are you tired of talking about it? Do you have your teams picked out? What do you think will happen when they tee it up tomorrow night, first of all, in first game between Notre Dame and Penn State, and then Friday night, Ohio State in Texas. Your thoughts? We'll talk about those odds. We'll talk about what might be ahead and discuss that tonight with our panel, illustrious. But we have some unfinished business. What in the world does it take to get a mention on national TV when you beat the number one team in the country by 30 and now have been the only school to ever beat the number one football team by 30? See 1997 Sugar Bowl, Steve Spurrier, and the number one basketball team ranked by the AP, Tennessee, by 30. My goodness gracious, can't even draw a breath. Surprised to these guys in the media. I let some of them go to know today. So we'll talk about that with our panel tonight. Up first, Scott Carter will join us from from FloridaGators.com. Then Allie P. McGraw is on next, followed at some point by Franz Beard. All the best to Franz and his family. And then we'll finish up with Tony Barnhart, an illustrious panel tonight coming your way right here on the Buddy Martin Show. Tell your friends and neighbors it's time to talk about college football and basketball.
Yes, it's time again for Buddy Martin. Call him up and tell him what you're thinking. But be kind because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Hey, what if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye!
You ready, champ?
I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
Good evening. I hope you're warm. I wasn't last night. I was freezing cold when I woke up at 4 o'clock and this gas furnace behind me went on. And I sat here in front of it. It was cold. And I know it was cold where this guy was in Gainesville, but it was a hot time in the old town last night. Scott Carter, good evening. You were there for the big moment. What a moment it was. And I was disappointed the national media didn't pay more attention. But I'm going to be a big guy, Scott. Evening to you.
Hey, buddy.
I know we're going to have some delay problems. We've had on our end all day, even television. So just ignore them, whatever it is. I know it's been all over TV. But we're here, and you can hear what Scott's saying. Always, he speaks clearly. And just let you take it from the top. I don't know that I've seen ever anything quite like what we saw in Florida basketball. I know I haven't. First of all, we've never seen the number one team beaten by Florida in a regular season game. There was a time, I guess, the 04s beat them back in the day for the championship. But you were in the gym. There was you get conflicting reports on social media. Some say, well, the students weren't there and Scott Strickland pushed them out and whatever. And I'm sure there's some who were mad about that and maybe justifiably so. But they say, man, I've heard it so loud. 11,000 people. It was great. How was it in there, Scott?
Buddy, it was a great atmosphere. I thought it was the best atmosphere I've seen in the O-Dome in several years. Obviously, a great performance. I mean, you show up at that game, you're thinking, okay, Florida's coming off the loss to Kentucky. They got another chance to kind of make a statement with this number one ranked Tennessee coming to town. never beaten a number one ranked team at home, buddy. The only 2 wins against number one ranked teams in the history of the program both came in the NCAA tournament. One against Ohio State in the national championship game, of course, and one a few years earlier against Duke in the tournament. So, you just don't know what to expect. Tennessee 14-0 coming in playing well. And the Gators just dominated from start to finish. The crowd got into it early. And Todd Golden afterward, I mean, I thought he summed it up in a few words. It was a super complete performance. And that's about the only way you can talk about it, because when you looked at the box score after the game, I mean, the numbers were so in favor of Florida. In the second half, for a lot of the second half, the Gators' lead in the game was more points than Tennessee had. So they doubled them up at times. They led by 36 at one point. So if you're a Florida basketball fan, you've been kind of on the fence about this team, not really knowing if they were real or not. They're real. I think I believed it before last night, but I have no doubts now. I think this team can do some special things. Are they going to take their lumps here and there in the SEC? Yes, they're going to lose some games. The SEC is by far the toughest conference in the country, but I think in the end, Florida will be in good shape. And, before we move on, buddy, I do want to talk about, because I just looked at my Twitter after about 3 or 4 hours, and boy, I was getting hammered on there, probably about as bad as I've ever gotten hammered. I just opened my email. I think I got the nastiest email I've ever gotten in my career. And it's all related just that I listened to Scott Strickland's appearance on Jeff Cardozo's and Pat Dooley's local radio show this afternoon. I didn't know he was going to be on there. I saw Pat Dooley tweet that he was going to be on there. So I said, well, I'll listen. I'm guessing he's probably going to address that. He did right at the top of his appearance. And he kind of went through how that transpired, how historically, and I've seen this a lot in my time at Florida, those games during the student breaks, there's a lot of empty seats, and it's natural. The students leave town, they're on break, not sometimes marquee opponents. So I think this year, to combat some of that, they offered these 3-game packages to fans for those seats. And I guess the first couple of games it went okay, but this last one, obviously, the students, a lot of them came back early, and I'm in my own bubble sometimes, and I didn't even know that there was a special package to fans for this break.
I didn't know this now. That's the first time I heard
So
of it.
what I think has happened here, I mean, it was nothing nefarious. I think Scott explained it pretty well. It was just a sensible opportunity to sell some tickets that don't usually get sold at a time when the students are out. I think the mistakes were made on the front end, not communicating that clearly, or if at all. And also, they just I think they've underestimated how many would be back. So the numbers didn't line up. They sold more. After the sales, they had less seats for the students, and more students showed up than the seats. So, it's unfortunate he said that. Hopefully people will get over it quick. But, it's just one of those things where, wow, I didn't expect this to be that big of a deal. But, sometimes with social media, you never know what's going to be a big deal, buddy.
The mean streets of social media, folks. This is one of the nicest people in the whole world right here. He's only helping you, trying to do somebody else's job. If I find any fault, is that they don't have enough people explaining. They don't seem to have a responsibility. Everything has to be a handout, whatever. Then when a guy goes on the show and does something, there's so much angst and anger built up over all the things. I mean, Scott has taken a beating in recent months. Even back when he had decided to keep Billy, he took a beating. I'm not going to fight his wars for him. I got my own battles, but don't beat up on Scott Carter, please.
That's very nice, buddy. And that's not why
I read it. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of explain it. Like, if I guess I'm just of a different breed. I mean, I'm one of those people, I can't imagine ever sitting down on my Twitter account and just firing off nasty stuff at people I don't know. That's just not me. But I realize in my position, I expect it, and I'm used to it. But I hadn't had this kind of tone in a long time. Yeah. But in fairness, I mean, I think we as an organization, the UAA, I mean, we deserve some criticism, if we didn't communicate that properly. Yeah. So I'm not defending that we didn't do anything wrong or we made a misstep. I'm just a little shocked at kind of the irate response. And of course, Scott is a favorite punching bag for the
He
a
is
lot of
that.
fans on social
He
media.
is that.
You know, it's a tough job. I tell people all the time who complain maybe about this or that. I said, look, if I was doing the job tomorrow, I would do some things differently probably. But guess what? There would still be people who didn't like some of my decisions. That's just the nature of that beast. No matter what you do in the public eye, you're going to be criticized. And sometimes we see it all the time in politics, sports, entertainment.
Yeah.
I mean, people just have no what's the word? No default setting once they get on the social media, man.
Yeah, it's a good way of saying it, and it's too bad because we're in one of those. You're right. It's like it's contentious. Everything is contentious. I say blue, you say red. You know, it's just opposite. And no matter what you say, probably half the people are not going to like it. It seems that that's the case. So I wrote in the column for a long time, 60-something years. And I never worried about what people said. Now, does it hurt sometimes? Yeah, hit below the belt. But the fact is, when you're out there, and you're not one of those kind of guys that's out there trying to beat on people, I have taken my shots in time, and I've at people, and they fired back, and that's okay with me when they want to fire back.
Yeah.
This one point, and we'll move on a day when we should be talking about one of the great nights in Florida sports history. What happened last night at Exact Tech is that I wish we could convince the powers that be that they need to communicate better with everybody, not just the ones who give money, but not the ones who are just on social media, but in general, just do a better job. And I don't know what the rest of the people. I seems like everything gets handled in a press conference or a press release, and nobody has telephone conversation. They're afraid to write anything. So that's sad. Anyway, on this night, however, there's so many good things that happen. I mean, I got my own personal favorites on that team, and I really have enjoyed watching them. And I was thrilled last night to watch them play. Now somebody wrote on social media, well, there's one guy number 11. He shoots too much. Come on, guys. He was one of the big stories of the night. Denzel Aberdeen. I've loved him since I first heard his name, which I still love. He was a remarkable 6'8" guy, and he's got the arms of about a 7-footer. I love how he handles the ball. His inspiration, his defense. He shoots the rock pretty good. He scored 10 points in the first half, and he showed that look, even after that 300 monster of guards is gone, they got some firepower if he stays, and hopefully he will. I also really, really do like the rest of those guys on the bench, and particularly what a night Ruben Chinaloo had. Talk about Ruben Chinaloo, a guy that we're just hearing about now, and we're just learning about him, and he is remarkable. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I talked to Ruben before the season. It was a totally off the radar kind of in-house story. It was about student athletes who were involved in this leadership program, and he just got on campus over the summer from Washington State. Obviously, he's from Africa, and his father died when he was young, and then he's over here in America now, and he's one of these kids that you can just see the way he plays. I mean, he's one of these kids who realizes, wow, I've got a great opportunity here, so I'm going to make sure that I take advantage of all the resources and obviously try to develop into a professional basketball player. And he just brings a size in. 4 points and 15 rebounds last night. And Rick Barnes, the Tennessee coach, said it best after the game. Offensive rebounds, just rebounding in general, that is about attitude. It's about hustle. It's about effort. And he just praised Chinyelu and Half and Martin and those guys, the way they just went after all the balls last night. They were getting all the rebounds. And but Chinyelu, he's a big piece of the puzzle. Obviously, Todd Golden has really done a nice job in his time at Florida in finding these pieces to come in and replace other veteran players, and it's working. And I think Chinyelu is just another one in that stream, and I think the guy's just untapped potential. I mean, he's one of those guys you've seen it, players like this over the years, buddy. He's still very raw in some of his development, but he's got that effort. He's got that motor. So automatically you're going to be a defensive presence and you're going to be a presence on the boards. So once he gets more polished offensively, it's only going to help him. It's only going to help Florida. And I just love what he brings to the team.
Yeah. Of course, we know about the big guys like, Walter Clayton, and who had an off night, 7 points.
Yeah.
And Will Richard, and the three had all those guards and the rest of the bench. But the one guy I've always liked has been my favorite player, Alex Condon.
Oh,
he has everything about I like in a player. He's a fierce competitor. He's an unbelievable rebounder. He is he ought to get the hustle award he dives for more balls on the floor. He's a really good passer for a big man. And I like how he takes the ball to the hole aggressively. And he's just a baby. He's still young. And this guy, I think, is a sensational player. And I've loved watching him play. I hope he's around for at least another year.
Yeah, Alex is definitely, to me, I look at him as kind of the glue in some ways because he can go out, he can play in. He had some nice low post moves last night, a little turnaround one-handers. Obviously, 12 points, 12 rebounds against the number 1 ranked team in the country. He does it all. And I just think that's the kind of player that Todd Golden, he likes, these versatile guys who have size but also have athleticism. So there's such there's guys who can do a lot of different things on the court, and they can create a lot of different mismatches offensively. Of course, have some mismatches. So, big again. I don't know what else to say about Alex. To me, they wouldn't be the same team without him. Although you've got those great guards and Clayton and Martin and Richard, you have to have a Condon to kind of tie it all together so they can play in out. And then you have Chinyelu in there getting those tough boards and those tough defensive assignments. And I just thought it just worked so good together last night. It's not going to look like that every game, but when it looks like that against the number 1 team in the country, you kind of see the upside of that, what they have.
Yeah, for sure. And by the way, Allie didn't see us when we were on there. Well, I don't want her to say something that she regrets saying. She's her business. Evening, Allie. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, good. We're just talking hoops, and it's a lot to talk about. And I know Scott's got to go. I'm going to get you on here. But, yeah, I think, Scott, you're exactly right. But we should always treasure. And I wrote this tweet last night, and I'm not going to read it, about how can you beat the number 1 team in the country by 30 and not have any mention at all on national media. I finally wrote Feinbaum a note, and he put it on the air. And it's like they just completely ignored it. Like, well, they beat the number 1 team in the country by 30. Come on. Yeah. Not to mention the fact they beat, as you said, won the Sugar Bowl game over 52-20 over Florida State. But then, anyway, I'll say thank you, Scott. Any final thoughts before I let you go and Ali jumps here to save the show?
No, I'm good. Just for a little nugget, you guys probably saw that was the biggest win over a number 1 ranked opponent, buddy, since 1968.
68, right?
When Houston beat UCLA in the Final Four. How about that? I mean, that's a long time.
Pretty freaking cool. First time we picked off.
So it's a long time ago.
It's the first time we picked off a number 1 at home too, right?
It was. We were the only 2 we had were in the NCAA tournament, once against Duke and once against Ohio State. So yeah, it was the first one at home ever. So anyway,
that's awesome.
There were a lot of those kind of things, and I'm going to give it to Fran Spirit. Shout out to Franz, by the way, who's gone through some tough times lately, losing his pet, stepfather, and mom's ill right now. So Franz is a really sharp basketball writer. He knows his stuff. I mean, I would defer to him like I would defer to Shane on playing quarterback. Franz actually coached basketball when it was young, the young girls. But anyway, so that as well. And before I forget about it, I do have a category. Go ahead.
No, I had a funny. You were talking about Franz coaching basketball. So a couple of years ago, we were covering it was that run when the Gators women were hot and they were playing LSU at home. I'm in the pregame meal. Franz comes over. He starts talking. He tells me how he used to coach, women's basketball. Yeah. And he told me Coach Kim Mulkey. And I'm like, I'm sitting there, okay. I didn't know if it was true or not. I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's true. Well, so after the game, I do my work and I'm walking out. Sure enough, Kim Mulkey's got her hand around Franz, and they're joking like good old friends. It was just funny. Like, oh, okay, he did coach her.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Anyway, just my last little story, and I'll let you guys
Yeah,
go.
but
So,
Scott, it's good to see you smiling. Stop getting so ferocious. It's not you that people taking after you. It's like kind of, punch grandpa in the stomach. Come on, man. Let's go. Leave this guy alone. All right.
well, that's the first time I'm ever going to talk grandpa, buddy. So
Oh,
you just,
I just say you're
Wow, yeah.
I'm the grandpa. I'm saying it's that kind of cruel. Okay.
I know. I'm messing with you. You guys have a good night.
Take care, buddy. Thank you very much. And before I start with this young woman who's just doing an unbelievable job, I promised myself I would put this down. BIF. Before I forget,
There you go.
things I want to say today, and I want to say a shout out and a happy birthday to Marilyn Hedberg in Wisconsin. She's my daughter's mother-in-law. She's fantastic, and she's a great lady and fun to be with. And I just want to say a happy birthday to Marilyn. Okay, got that done. Didn't quite forget it.
There you
What's
go.
happening, Allie? What's happening?
Oh, just another crazy day in Wilburland over here.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure your day hasn't been very busy, and as always. Yeah, good to be with you again. And we're going to get into the meat of a few things, including I think I'm done chasing my tail on people who are going to commit in the portal. I'm just not going to do it anymore.
Yeah.
We saw one commit and uncommit in less than
48 hours. Yeah.
I'm not going to do that. I haven't got time for that. I'm
Yeah.
already the title of the show is, do we have too much busyness going on? And we have so much busyness that the national media can go through the day and nobody mentioned the number one team in the country of basketball got beat by 30.
Yeah, that is crazy.
Wasn't big enough. And I talked to a couple of friends of mine, the guys that are around the horn. Even Woody Page said he brought it up to his producer, and he said no. And his producer's a Gator grad, and his dad's my classmate. And anyway, didn't feel like it was worth putting on there. I don't know.
That's
Just
crazy.
me. Am I being a homer? Allie?
No. I think anytime the number one team in the country goes down, particularly by 30, it's newsworthy. I mean, I don't know. Maybe we just have different definitions of newsworthy. What in college basketball is more newsworthy than that? Because if there was a single college basketball story on anywhere, it should have been this one.
I'm sure Georgia's win was big over Kentucky, and that was worth mentioning. But my gosh, just the compelling part of a complete domination where a team can't breathe. They can't score a point for, what was it, 8 minutes or something? Can't get a point.
Yeah.
And this is a team that just gave up 106 at Rupp. And they're playing Tennessee, who had the number one offense in the SEC, and just shut them down.
Yeah.
And I thought it was amazing. It really did. So I want to make sure I get that in. And the theme of tonight's show is, are we too busy to notice? And I guess we are in that regard. It just seems like that there's some obvious stories. Now, this basketball team, before we switch over to football, and you catch me up on, I've been watching some of your podcasts. By the way, don't forget to watch Ali's podcast, Pick Inside the Gators. It's on quite a bit. I don't know, 3 or 4 times a week. And she's grinding stuff out in between raising 2 sets of twins and teaching Eric how to be a grown-up. So there you go. Well, anyway, trying. I'll put it that way. So Allie, just give me your take on that whole night. I mean, you know what you said on your show about it, but tell me what happened. I know here's a few things. They held Tennessee to 13.8% shooting for threes, held Tennessee to 30% shooting for twos, scored 40 points in the paint, scored 19 second chance points. That's pretty impressive.
I mean, I think complete domination from literally the jump. And I really like this team. I think they're going to make a lot of noise. I think Tennessee is a really good team. I think these are both, I would be shocked if both of them weren't in the Elite Eight. And the fact that Florida was able to, Saturday, when we played Kentucky, I felt like that was a kind of just an old fashioned slugfest. And I think Rump played a role in it. But I think, obviously at the end, Florida was not victorious, but I was really proud of the effort that we saw. And I felt like they could hang, right? But that it did also make me think like, all right, well, they probably won't beat Tennessee based on that performance. And so to hold Tennessee to such
Wrong.
what?
They're going to beat Tennessee. You said.
Well, right. Yes.
Yeah.
I was totally wrong. But also, it's not just that they beat Tennessee, it's the fashion that they beat them in. I mean, there were points in time where I was like, this is like watching a JV team play a varsity team.
Yeah.
Like, how
Yeah.
is this team the number one team in the country? How did this Gator
Yeah.
team lose to Kentucky? And I knew this Gator team was really talented, right? Like we've watched that, and it is basketball teams aren't going undefeated 99 times out of 100, right? So that was also not, we knew losses were going to happen. And if a loss is going to happen, the number one team in the country, would be the right team to lose to, right? But
Right.
just absolutely complete domination from the jump, record setting, historic, really fun to watch. I wish the ticket fiasco stuff that was going on wasn't kind of dominating.
We're going to address that. I don't want to embarrass Scott, but we'll address that.
Yeah,
You go ahead.
I didn't love that was kind of dominating social media during a time that Florida was dominating Tennessee. Like that should have been the only headline, was how good this basketball team was. And instead, social media was filled with fans complaining. And we'll get into whether that was right or wrong. And so that did, like, I hated that kind of dampened it a little bit. But incredibly impressive win. This team is good.
Yeah. Okay, let's get to this point because it's difficult. I can see both sides.
Me too.
It's not an answer that people want to hear. There's a lot of anger out there right now. This is a very contentious society we're in, and we know politically and otherwise. Everything has been that way for a while. There's some built-up anger on Scott Strickland. He's taken some unwarranted criticism and some warranted criticism, by the way. And he deserves both, by the way. And so now it comes down, and Scott explained it a little bit. I didn't hear the podcast. I tried to, I missed it. And he said that there was the 3-game package for the for people who wanted to buy tickets that included these games.
Right.
And the holidays, and this, of course, was the GEM of the whole ones. And they didn't anticipate this many students coming back early, and they did. They weren't prepared for it, and they did a poor job on this. And then we saw a bunch of social media stuff, pictures of students look like they're being kicked out. They waited online all night long in the cold weather. It was just a bad look. I don't know.
So I listened to a little bit of the interview, and and honestly, it was more of an explanation than an apology. And I kind of wish it had just been more of an apology, if that makes sense. Like, I understand explaining where you were coming from, but opening with, this was a bad idea. Now, he did say that this will not be done moving forward. So I took that as an apology and as an admission of maybe it wasn't handled well, but I still think an outright apology would be the way to go. But essentially, they looked at data from previous seasons of games that happen in Gainesville during a break. And they used those attendance records to determine how many student tickets they were going to have and how many tickets they were going to sell to the general public. Now, the issue is that they did put it in that 3-ticket package. And if they had just waited and said, like, we'll sell whatever tickets the students don't use, I think they would have been okay. But they never reevaluated. So over the summer, when they make their ticket packages and they put them out or whatever, they looked at that data and decided then that this was an okay move. Not knowing Tennessee was going to be the number one team in the country and this was going to be a top 10 matchup or whatever else. They didn't know any of that information. But they also didn't allow themselves an out if this situation would have happened, which then it did. And so, the other misstep is that instead of selling them as general admission, they sold them as specifically designated seats, which generally that area down there is first come, first serve, which I think that is where you saw police officers getting involved, because there were people that had bought tickets that were assigned to a specific seat. Students were used to just getting in, going to the student section and getting the best seat they can find, which is what they went to do. So, and Strickland did say in the interview that none of the students were ejected, that they were all just moved to a different area of the arena. But it just seems like lack of communication. I caught the very end of you talking about it with Scott when I logged on, and you said they need to do a better job communicating with everybody. And I think that's the case because clearly students didn't wait in line all day long in the freezing cold to be turned away, right? They did not realize that was going to happen.
Mhm.
So therefore there was a miscommunication somewhere, right? And
Yeah.
I don't know if maybe that was communicated over the summer and people didn't really pay attention to it because it wasn't a top 10 matchup and at that point and whatever, but then resend the email or something. Send it 5 times, whatever you got to do to make it obnoxiously known that this process is going to be different than it's ever been. But it feels very much like an unforced error on the UAA's part, which
Good,
they've kind of
good.
had a lot of.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the thing is, there is no more margin for error on things like this.
Yeah.
There's been mistakes made. And I hate to even bring these things up on a day after one of the biggest wins in about athletic program ever in the history of Florida, albeit it was a regular season. Don't make your reservations for San Antonio yet, but they look like they're going to be there, possibly.
Yeah.
They just haven't done a very good job on the basics of explaining things. They have been pick a few favorites in the media. They don't talk to everybody. They don't particularly, seems like you feel, and I'm not asking for anybody to feel sorry for everybody, Martin. I have my choice. I can either do this or not. I don't have to do it. But I think the thing is that I feel like I and others aren't even really wanted up there. We're kind of in the way. You know what I'm saying? I'm not there I'm like I want to go see a football game. I've seen enough. I'm there to do a job, just like when you go, you are. I'm lucky enough to have a lot of good people I know who've been around the program like you, and I can talk to them and continue to do it. But I don't know why they've been so standoffish and afraid. It's like when someone's got a paper, they go, "Oh, I don't want you to see this," like they're afraid someone's going to find out what their intentions are, and that's the thing I think I wish they could get over that hump because it would make it nicer for everybody, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We have just had so many unforced errors in the last couple of years by the UAA, and they just be humans, just be human beings here, right? Like just communicate to us like we're people, treat all of the fans, like they're fans and you want them because you need the fans. That's how this all stays profitable, right? But I can see totally both sides. I don't think it was a bad intentions on the UAA's part. I think they just didn't really think it all the way through. And in hindsight, they should have figured out a way to give themselves an out, and they didn't. They should, and I think the changes that they've said that they're going to do moving forward will help. Like they have said, if they have leftover seats, they'll put them on sale last minute for general admission, as opposed to selling them as part of a ticket package or having a reserve seat or any of that. Like that's fine. I don't want empty seats in the O'Connell Center either, right? Nobody wants empty seats there. That's not a great solution. I just don't want our students disenfranchised, who, by the way, are your future boosters, right? So there was a better way to handle it, but at this point, it's over.
All right, let me jump in here real fast and remind people that we do have to pay the bills, and that one of the people who helps us is Meldon Law. They are well known in the community for what they do. They sponsor many things in the media. Jeffrey, of course, is all over the program with his name and the money he spends. They're also the only official injury law firm of the University of Florida. And they also are in the law business. By the way, if you need a lawyer, check them out. They're in 4 locations now to serve you, including Williston, Ocala, Gainesville, Lake City, Meldon Law. They won't back down. Let's go right back to the guest line and see. Here's a guy who knows how to write basketball. And I'm telling you, if I got to set a cover a game, this is the guy I'd like to have. France Beer. Good evening, France.
Good evening. Hey, Allie, how's everything going?
Hey, I'm doing good. How are you?
Well, in life with a kicker,
Life with a kicker.
I used to look at Chaz Henry and I just go kickers, and he'd go, "Yeah, we're weird."
Chaz is one of the more normal ones too.
I know, but We've had such a great tradition of punters at the University of Florida. When you think about it, when you go back to Bobby Joe Green, Don Chandler, and on and on and on. And your husband was a pretty darn good one, involved in one of the greatest plays in Florida football history.
Yeah, he had a good little run there for sure. And he, we had a lot of good guys that came after him as well. There's definitely a really rich kicking history as well at UF for sure.
I remember Bobby Joe Green, and Buddy, you may remember this. Bobby Joe Green would put hula hoops down in the ends at the 1 and the 2 and the 3 yard line, and he'd stand at midfield, and he'd take bets that he could put 9 out of 10 in the hula hoops, and he would win every time.
That's crazy.
He's an amazing kicker. I know we only got you for a couple of minutes, and we've got Tony Barnhart standing by, and I wanted you, the basketball expert, to give us your insight to what you saw in the stadium last night, what you witnessed, what this was. You wrote a nice piece in GatorBait this morning. If you haven't seen it, go to GatorBait.com and sign up for it. Friends, what in the world happened last night at Exec Tech Arena?
Well, we start with the Al McGuire philosophy that you cut the head off the snake. And in Tennessee's case, it's a two-headed snake, which is Zakai Ziegler and Chaz Lanier, and Florida just basically took both of them out of the ball game, and without them, the Vols were nothing. And here's the interesting contrast there. Will Richard and Walter Clayton Jr. scored 14 points between them, and yet here are the Gators winning by 30 with two of their arguably 3 or 4 best players. Walter Clayton, everybody will agree, is the best player. Will Richard is right there with them. And they get 14 points between them, but they contribute. They do other things that help win. These other two guys, they get taken out of the ball game, and they did nothing on the other end of the floor. So it was a big contrast, but the biggest thing that it shows is how well coached this team is, how well Todd has got these guys understanding that you don't have to score a lot of points to impact how the game is played. Ruben Chinyelu, 4 points, 15 rebounds, and effectively put the game on ice in the first half with that block. When he put that block and that ball went rolling down Chaz Lanier and then took a little bounce, hit his head, and then rolled out of bounds. That play right there, the game was over. You could have called the game right there, said it is over, quit, no more, because Tennessee's goose was fried or cooked or whatever you want to call it. What is it, Tony? You know this stuff. Is it a cooked goose or a fried goose? I think it's a cooked one.
Are you from the South or not?
That would be cooked, friends. Yes.
Okay. But Tennessee was done with that play. Reminded me, believe it or not, this is how my mind works. I saw a high school game. Patrick Young was a senior playing in the state championship game, and they were playing this team from South Florida that had this kid named Fab Mello, who was the number 1 player in the country that year, went up to Syracuse, a 7-footer. And they were ahead 12-0, and all of a sudden Fab Mello goes in for a dunk, and Patrick Young just held his ground, and Patrick didn't move, but the ball and Fab Mello just kind of slithered to the floor, and the game was over at that point. And this play last night reminded me of it, but Florida was just such a defensively dominant team, and what makes me believe that they could do it and make it to the Final Four has to do with the fact that, again, Walter Clayton, 7 points, Will Richards, 7 points, and yet they contributed mightily to the game defensively. Will Richards just did a number on Chaz Lanier. Chaz Lanier may not be right for 3 weeks after that. And what Walter did to Ziegler was similar. Ziegler only had 1 assist last night. He's second in the nation coming into the game with 8 assists a game. He had 1.
Friends, real quick, there was also a pretty good game there. Looks like the former Gator coach had a big win last night. Tony, Georgia comes away with one over the UK.
Yeah, I saw that score and I said, well, that can't be right. But it was. It was. Well, it just what it shows you is I haven't made the adjustment to basketball yet, but
we're gonna get to football next. Don't worry.
Well, what I'm saying is this is going to be a historic year in SEC basketball because there's so many good teams and they're going to beat each other up. Tournament time is going to be really, really interesting, but it's fun to watch the SEC go deep as a conference in basketball. It's going to be fun.
Tony, I think 14-4, 13-5 wins the league this year.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think you're going to have I think 11 is going to be the 10 and 11 wins are going to get you a 3 or 4 seed. I think teams are going to get in with 8 and 9 conference wins. Lenardi's got, I think, 14 teams in.
Okay, well, let's get to
not bad for a football conference. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say that the kind of people would argue, Allie, that's what happened in football.
We do it in football, we do it in basketball, we do it in baseball, we do it in gymnastics, we do it in women's soccer. I mean, is there a sport that we don't beat up each other in?
Yeah, that's certainly a factor. And let us we all 4 on here. We're going to talk some football for a second. I know Francis has got to go. Francis, I'm sorry for all the trouble you're going through with, and your family's been ill and all the things. All the best to your mom. Sorry about your loss of your pet and everything. And thank you for soldiering on and doing such good work that you're doing and doing it. I know it's sort of a distraction to what you're going through with. All the best to you, and our thoughts and prayers are with your family. Let's talk for a second about, look, if I was real honest, and I hate to be this way because I love college football so much, I'm about this far from getting a little football playoff weary. I've really talked about it a lot now, and I'm thinking, let's see the games. And here we are, guys. So we're going to talk about each one, both of the games. And oddly enough, Florida, Tony, the SEC can still redeem itself and win another championship. The 14th, I think, in 18 years. All of a sudden, we're all Longhorn fans. What do you think? You think these guys can pull it off and come away with a win and save the SEC?
Texas is a very well-coached team, a lot of skill. Defense is much better than people think it is. I will simply say this. If the Ohio State team that has played in the first 2 rounds of this tournament, if that's the team that shows up, Texas can't beat these guys. If the team that lost to Michigan on November 28th, if that team shows up, then the Horns have got a chance. But right now, that $21 million that they put in their NIL program seems to finally be paying off now that we're in the semifinals of the tournament.
Yeah. What's that line in that game? Is it 5?
5.5, yeah.
5.5, yeah. So Ohio State, when they're right, they are really, really good. I got to become a Longhorn fan, though. This is what has to happen, Allie, if the SEC is going to retain any dignity out of this.
I know. I begrudgingly am a Longhorn fan right now, I guess. And I think Tony is right. And, Ohio State has been so good the last 2 games, unstoppable. They win a national title if they play the way they've played the last 2 games. But I think what you're seeing now is also why you saw fans losing their minds at points earlier in the season, because they knew that this was the team that they had. And that's not how they were playing, against Michigan, but against Oregon the first time around. And even just in games that they let inferior opponents hang around. And, Saban made his comments on game day about how their fans are crazy and stuff. And that's pot meat kettle for Alabama, but it's because this was what they were capable of, right? And they were actually underperforming at times earlier in the season.
I'm sorry, I had to talk to some of their fans, and they're mad. They're really mad. They're playing in the semifinals, and they're mad. Where has this team been all year? Mm-hmm. What have they been doing?
Right. But I get that argument, right? Yeah. Like, I also get being grateful for where you are and you have an opportunity to win a national title. But you do have to question, like, shoot, where has this team been?
Mm-hmm. Well,
good question.
The thing that surprised me, Tony, is how Will Howard suddenly looks like he could win the Heisman Trophy.
Yep.
And against Michigan, he looked like he couldn't quarterback a JV team in a high school. I don't know what they injected him with, but whatever it is, it's working. He's looked like a world beater of a quarterback, and he looked pathetic. Not just the Michigan game. There were several games when you start looking at, the McCord kid that goes up to Syracuse, and you're saying, why the hell did they run this guy off all four? Because look at what they've got now.
Yep.
And that's what was interesting about him, guys, is that at Kansas State, he would have a great game, and then he'd have a game where he couldn't throw it in the ocean. And now the last two games, the last week, he was just incredible. So we'll see which team and which quarterback is going to show up for Ohio State. We'll find out.
Tony, are you of the opinion that if the quarterback's playing, when you get at this level of playoffs, etc., that if your quarterback is playing well, the rest of the team follows suit? Or I just seem to think that looking at who we've got in the playoffs, the team that's had the great quarterback play has the rest of the team has followed suit.
Franz, I think that's 100% accurate. The biggest change that I've seen in the last 20 years of doing this is it used to be college football was a game where if you had a good quarterback, a great defense, and could run the ball, you could probably win most of the time. Now you can't have a good quarterback. You have to have an elite quarterback.
Two of them.
And you saw what happened to Georgia when they lost their elite quarterback.
That's those Alabama teams in 2009, 2010, like that time period. That was a game manager, serviceable quarterback who wasn't going to make mistakes, really great run game, and an elite defense.
Yeah.
Not the
Let me real fast, just real quick, and say this and let Franz get back to what you got to do. I know you got things going on. And we'll finish up this conversation. Titan MRI imaging. By the way, keep that in mind. It's not what it's called. Titan MRI imaging. Acquired high field MRI. Joe Coloria started high field MRI in 1997. Now he's back. Titan MRI imaging now has 3 locations, 2 in Gainesville, and also 1 in Columbia County, also nearby Valdosta, and soon to be in Ocala. Titan MRI imaging now accepts insurance, or through their convenient self-pay option. You can also find other ways, offer MRIs, CAT scans, X-rays, and ultrasounds, easily scheduled with lots of options. So check them out. They're now called Titan MRI and Imaging, and you can get the best deal you can get anywhere on your needs for that kind of thing. All right, let's go around the horn real fast and see who we wind up picking. And let me start with Allie to win it all. Let's go ahead and pick them all. Let's pick these 2 games and pick the winner.
All right. Well, I do think Ohio State beats Texas, unfortunately. I think Notre Dame beats Penn State. And I think Ohio State Notre Dame gives us maybe the most fun championship game we've had in a while. And I'm going to go with Ohio State.
Okay. Here's an Ohio State. Tony?
Notre Dame, somebody described Notre Dame to me as the best ugly team you've ever seen. And that's because they don't do anything particularly well. They don't do anything that's flashy, but they are very good on the line of scrimmage. They were absolutely the better football team than Georgia the other night. They were the better team, and they deserved to win the game. And they controlled Georgia on the line of scrimmage, and not many people do that. And I've got to go with Ohio. Guys, the Ohio State game is going to come down to who's got the most NFL draft choices on their offensive and defensive fronts, and that's Ohio State.
Yep.
And so I like Ohio State and Notre Dame in the finals, with Ohio State winning it all.
Okay, I agree with a lot of that. France?
I like the Fighting Franklins and Ohio State in a rematch there. I believe that Tyler Warren, I think, is, if you really want to know, I think the 2 best players remaining in this four-team tournament. Well, it's now a 4-team tournament. Are Tyler Warren and Jeremiah Smith, and I think they're going to take their 2 teams to win. I think Tyler Warren is just, he's the most fun guy to watch because you never know what they're going to use him with, and something just tells me that this is James Franklin's year. I don't know what it is about it, but I look for Notre Dame to do their imitation of Manila and fold.
You know, I didn't. Here's I want to plead ignorance on something. I didn't realize this until I just heard him say it. I really love how Notre Dame's playing right now. I'm with Tony. Everything I thought Georgia would do, Notre Dame did. And did it so well and executed at the highest level. Even out coached. Marcus Williamson was out coached Kirby. And with that call, getting the drawing guy off sides. All those in the playbook, but they did it so well. They got the call and they did it right and they got it at the right time. Brilliant coaching, brilliant calls. I thought they were great. So, and then of course, here's the other thing I'm going to say. I was listening to James Franklin. Let's be honest. James Franklin is one of those guys they said in baseball years ago, and he used to say home run hitters hit Cadillacs back with Cadillacs, and singles hitters hit Chevys. You know, he drives Chevys. James Franklin been a Chevy driver in my mind, and he's never won the championship. I don't know if he will, but here's what I want to say. He made a comment. He thought it would be so great to get a chance Notre Dame would play against Penn State and talked about 2 African-American coaches. I didn't know James Franklin was African-American. Am I the only person in the world that didn't know that?
Yes.
Boy, well, I feel pretty good about it. I sure have my prejudice, by golly. You know. So anyway, I like my pick is I'm going to go with Texas. I know that's not the popular pick. I'm going to be an SEC fan here, and so I'll go with the Longhorns, and I go with Notre Dame to win. And then I think Notre Dame will win the national championship. That's how much I think of them. So there's my picks.
Very good.
Well, anyway. All right, so we're going to get down to the end here, and we're going to figure out what we got. I promise I wasn't going to critique the system anymore because I think we've critiqued it. We know what's wrong. But I'm going to be upbeat about the college football season. Tony, friends, Allie, we talked about we couldn't wait. I think what bailed us out down here was the Gators and what happened in their last 4 games. It changed everything. Dynamics of the whole league in that regard, and we know with DJ Lagway there's something special going on there, and I think Billy has got a package that people are starting to pay attention to. They're going to be positioned well next year, but I will say that I want to see the league tighten things up a little bit. We're going to go to you think it'll be 18 or 16, Tony?
You mean
2 years?
You mean adding teams to the league?
Yeah.
No.
2 years. We'll go to 18 in 2 years.
Don't need to do it.
Okay.
You don't make a move like that. They needed to make the Texas-Oklahoma move to get what they wanted in the next contract, but they don't. Who would add the value that a Texas and Oklahoma would add? Who's out there that would give you the
Nobody.
Well,
Notre Dame.
You can't.
Yeah,
okay.
Notre Dame would. You're right.
Notre Dame would absolutely do that. But Notre Dame's not going anywhere. They're very happy where they are, and I just think it's going to be an interesting year for the SEC. I don't know about you guys. Based on what I'm reading, the SEC is going to give up football, right? Because it's over. It's over. There's no reason for them to go on and play football anymore. The end of the dynasty's over. Let's. And I found that laughable. I wrote in my column. I said, "You guys think it's over for the SEC? Just keep thinking that. Okay,
Yep.
You hold on to that thought."
Well, as long as you brought it up, what did happen, Allie?
I think NIL has helped spread the wealth a little bit. I think the SEC is still the most dominant conference top to bottom. I think maybe it weakened the very top a tiny bit, minor amount. And I think it strengthened a lot of the middle of the tier teams. And I think when you look at an Ole Miss or a South Carolina or a Florida, and you look at what their record are, those teams are stronger than what that record is because they beat up on each other week in and week out. The SEC is not going anywhere. I don't think the SEC wins it this year, but what did we just say? They'd won it 14 of the last 18 years. Like,
I think that's right.
we can pump the brakes on it being over. Like that's still pretty incredibly dominating if it's only 14 out of the last 19.
Well, there are more good teams, no great ones. And
That's right.
Tony, you shaking your head.
Yeah, we talked about that this summer, buddy. The fact that the SEC was going to be a very good league, but not a great league. There weren't going to be any great teams. Well, SEC had 5 teams to win 10 games or more. They had 3 more teams to win 9, so they could have won 10. I mean, no other conference can say that. Most conferences have 2 or 3 really good teams, 2 or 3 okay teams, and a bunch of bad teams.
Think about what Vanderbilt was this year.
Yeah.
We can't put those Florida teams in either tier that Tony just mentioned, but they're also a couple plays away from winning 9 or 10 games. They could have beaten that Tennessee team, and they could have beaten Georgia had Lagway gotten hurt, and that would have been another. It's an embarrassment of riches. I just think it's slightly more even, and the top is a tick weaker than we've seen it in the past.
Somebody else said this. It wasn't my idea, but they said what has happened this year is they've taken the middle class of the SEC and moved it to the upper middle class. Okay, there's more really good teams, and more teams fit in that. Really, the first half of the conference, more teams can qualify for that. So,
here's one thing that's happened. Is a school like Vanderbilt, which can't get a high school kid in, can go to the portal and get a guy who's got 3 or 4 years of college credits that show him with a B+ or better. And they take that to the admissions office, and that kid gets in. Now you got a guy with 30 starts who's played 3 years, who's started for 3 years, who has who's 20 credits away from a college degree. And Vanderbilt can't say no to that guy. And all of a sudden, Vanderbilt is getting it. And I think this is what's happened at the lower tiers all over college football is you're getting people who are saying, wait a second, I can get a grown man who has already proven himself on the field and in the classroom. And I can let players develop in the meantime, which is what I think Billy Napier's done at Florida.
Well, and the other thing is that, to your point, a guy that would have sat the bench for 2 years at Georgia, but is a 4 or 5 star guy, really good player, isn't putting in the 2 years on the pine before he becomes a starter. Yeah. He's putting in a year, realizing he's not starting the very next year. He's hopping in the portal and he's starting for Missouri, or he's starting for Mississippi State or Vanderbilt or whatever. And that's part of that weakening of the very top, because there is no patience. There is no, let me develop you, take the time, you'll start as a junior or whatever. It's what are you going to do for me right this very moment? And that's why those teams that we look at as maybe middle of the road in normal years are getting a little better, and the top of the top are getting a little lighter.
I think you saw a Gator, 24 hours guy from safety, go to Florida, and within 48 hours he was a Bulldog. I mean, it's just about, you thought recruiting was hard to keep up with. I'm not going to chase that anymore. I've just decided, you know what? Let me know when they land somewhere and they're playing, because it's just hard to know. I can't keep up with a kid who flips 3 times in 2 weeks, so. All right, so here we are, guys, at the end. How real is this for Billy? What's the number he should have to make to do it? And what is the prognosis, Tony, on the Florida Gators, or the way too early prediction for next year?
I'm definitely not big on numbers, particularly this time of year. I don't believe that you got to hit a number. What I do believe is that you got to show that your team is well coached and doing the things it's supposed to do, which is what the Gators did in the last half of the season. They looked like a well coached football team. And so, and they've got to make, I tell you what, you guys are a lot closer to it than I am, but what Billy Napier did, what they did the back half of the season, I thought was absolutely incredible. Because look, y'all talked about this after losing to Miami in the swamp. He was done. He was done.
Oh yeah, and we also agreed on that. We pretty
Yeah.
thought he was done. I know. Even France, the most optimistic one. In France, your take about next year way too early. What does Billy have to do?
I think he's going to win 9 games. I think people would like for him to win more than 9, but it's the SEC, and I think you can pick a lot of teams that are going to win 8 or 9 ball games next year. But I don't know that you can pick too many of them that are going to get beyond that threshold because of the fact that the league, it's still the SEC. It's still the SEC. You still got to play. There's that wonderful thing, and we're seeing it in basketball called the road trip. And that's the great equalizer. Road trips in the SEC in football and basketball, in baseball, you name the sport, are brutal. And that's why we're saying basketball 13-5 could win it. 10-2 could win the SEC next year.
Right.
Well, 9 wins, Allie, would put him one more than this year, and would be right on the cusp probably of the playoffs.
Yeah.
Depending on who those 3 losses were to, which is, obviously I think we're looking at Texas, Georgia, and whatever else. So they could have a really good 9-3 team and get a chance to get in and make that 12. Your thoughts? What do you see coming?
So I think 9 is probably a realistic goal and kind of bar, but I think more than 9, more than a hard and fast number, you got to do a couple things. You got to beat the teams you're supposed to beat, right? You're supposed to beat Kentucky. You're supposed to beat Mississippi State. You're supposed to beat, we don't have Arkansas on the schedule, but in Arkansas, like the teams you're supposed to beat, you have to always take care of business against them first. So when you do lose, it needs to be to a team that we view as an equal or better. So, potentially LSU, Texas, I can see the argument for Ole Miss in there, and maybe Texas A&M, right? Like those would probably be the only ones that I would say are maybe acceptable to lose to. But then outside of that, you got to be in every game, and you got to not lose because you made dumb mistakes. If you, go in a head-to-head battle against Texas and they are just the better team, but you battled, I think that's okay, right? If you have Texas on the ropes, but you send 10 men out on special teams twice during that game, and you have to call a timeout coming out of a timeout because you don't send the right number of guys out, or you don't know the play, or whatever else. Those are the things in year 4 that shouldn't happen, that we have seen happen. We saw 2 different times in the bowl game then send the wrong number of men out on the field for special teams. That has happened in more games than it hasn't happened for 3 straight years. So I think those things matter too, right?
These things.
Listen, you should it's amazing Eric doesn't have a heart attack every Saturday watching special teams and counting the number of people on the field. I'm lucky I'm not a widow at this point. So those things, I need you to do the little things right. Control what you can control. And I think if he does that and they win 9 games, that's awesome. He's safe. They've made progress. I think if you don't do those and you win 9 games, people are going to grumble. I don't know that you can fire a 9-win coach in year 4, no matter what, right? If you win the 4, but I don't know that people are pumped about 9 wins if it was sloppy getting to that.
Well, good stuff. And by the way, our fan base is real busy right now. They only got a few months to find Billy an offensive coordinator. Don't bother, folks. He's going to call the plays. You can bring friends in there and call him offensive coordinator. Billy's going to call the plays. But hey,
I'll take it. They pay him $800,000. I'll
be your
take the job.
Yeah, sounds good to me. Hey, great stuff, Allie. Friends, all the best to you, my friend, and your mom, and all the things you're going with down there. And Tony, always great to be with you guys. Thank you very, very much, everybody.
Bye, guys. Have a good night.
Take care.
All right, folks. That'll do it for our program tonight. And we're going to wind up with the Red Star Medical Research. I save it to the end because it's very special, because they're very special people and they do special things. First of all, they have our interests at heart. They want to find out more about our health in order to give us better treatments. They gather this data up and they send it off to these companies to let them know what our DNA is here, what are the tendencies and proclivities we have in our health. And they do that with clinical trials. I never knew before how important clinical trials were. They mean so much to medicine because you go in and you go, I've never been in one, and you say that you all take a pill, if that's what it is, and then one person takes a pill that's not whatever the pill, and they take it, they take the information, and they take it back and say, all right, what were the tendencies? And you find out by doing that exactly what you have to know for the data. They have things, they have trials on like measles, mumps, certain kinds of cancer, hay fever, etc. They've had over 800 clinical trials since they've been in business. They do a terrific job with this. You can go to their website, renstar.net, and find out what are they looking for now. You can sign up, and if you get picked, you can be paid for your time and travel during this time. Usually not a long-term commitment, no charge to your insurance, and you have a chance to make some money and also be doing a good thing because you're helping them, you're helping us in our database, know more about our medical things, and you're helping Renstar Medical Research in our community. I encourage you, check out renstar.net and go volunteer to take part in the clinical trials. You'll be glad you did. Renstar Medical Research, seeking tomorrow's answers to the health questions of today. That will be a wrap on the night. And thanks again to our guests tonight, Tony Barnhart, Franz Beard, Scott Carter, and Allie Peak Wilbur. Good panel. I'm very honored to have them. You have a great night, folks. And tomorrow morning, we're doing a special show in the morning with Rob Browne at 8 a.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. And we will have our regular cast from our Thursday night show, meaning Ben Troop, meaning Loren Meadows, and meaning Franz Beard tomorrow morning on the program talking about the games, which we'll be talking more about tomorrow with our group, and then we'll watch the game tomorrow night. Enjoyed the program tonight, folks. Enjoyed being with you. Thank you and good night.